All right, welcome to Entmoot episode 3. Today I'd like to talk about a subject which is also very current, which is global warming, more specifically CO2 on the rise kind of thing. And in general, I get inspired by things I read a lot in the news, and this is of course very current right now. We have some disagreement on a global scale. Is it more important to continue growth and therefore support capitalism and support the current lifestyle that we in the first world are able to sustain and we've accustomed ourselves to? Or is it important to heed the warnings and make drastic cuts in order to have a better future for our children? I think those are, the basic arguments from each side of this. As in the previous podcasts that I've done, there seems to be a common theme, and I'm sure there will be through most of these podcasts. It's about polarity. There's always seems to be two distinct sides to these things, and I actually think that these sides, they kind of repeat themselves throughout the whole thing. So once again, we have the a right wing, let's call it, and again, I would say more masculine side of things, which is, as you can also see under Trump, pushing for growth. Let's take it easy with this point of view that the whole world is gonna break and we need to do something, and let's just continue growth because there's people who need to put food on the table. And then we have the left, more feminine point of view of things, which is, holy smokes, let's do something now. We can survive with much less. Let's cut CO2. And this is such a huge subject, and especially this is where you can get a lot of details, a lot of statistics, which I would drown in that kind of information. So I'm going to try to keep it in spirit of this podcast, keep it simple, keep it layman, keep it observational, and keep it intuitive. So intuitively, I would say there's one thing that seems to jump to mind here with me, and that is, if you've ever seen a magic trick, is it really magic that's happening? No, of course it isn't. At least most of the time. I can't deny every single thing that's ever happened. There couldn't be some magic involved somewhere in there, and not magic as we understand it. It's basically an illusion. So you divert somebody's attention in one place in order to do what it is you really want to do in another place. I can't help getting the sneaking suspicion that when we look at these global CO2 reducing goals and the things that we're doing to reduce them, that we're looking at a magic trick. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I don't know why we're only talking about CO2. That's the thing that bothers me the most of all. CO2 is a gas, right? So it's basically based on global warming. So everything is based on global warming. We don't want more water. We don't want the ice poles to melt. But is that the only pollution we have? There's a lot of pollution that has to do with other things. I mean, there's the extraction of metals. There's for technology. So you're like mining all these third world countries in order to get stuff for your mobile phones and whatever. And there's poisoning of large areas, fracking, and there's all kinds of stuff going on that has sometimes something to do with CO2 and sometimes very little to do with, immediate spikes in CO2. So, for example, when governments are suggesting that we're cutting CO2, everything's okay, keep consuming. Boom, that's the magic trick in my opinion. Keep consuming, everything's good, consume a little bit less in this direction, consume a little bit more in this one over here. Now, where should we consume less? Okay, farming, meat, let's consume less in those areas. These are like fundamental, those are like backbone of industry areas. People have, lived for generations on that. Funny enough, probably, 2/3 if not more. This is just some number I'm throwing out there, but there's a lot of people around the world who are completely dependent on farming. And funny enough, they're the poorest ones. So let's cut on that, so that we can cut CO2. Okay, you might be cutting CO2, but in order to cut CO2 and still survive, you have to increase technology to, push things around in a different way. And technology is just increasing all the time. So there's nobody that I know of in the first world that is cutting the size of their new flat screen TV, or cutting how often they change their car, or cutting, of not getting the newest iPhone. In all these areas, there's nobody who's talking about not doing that. Actually, one of the reasons I like Tesla is that it kind of branches up on an idea that I had some years back, looking exactly at this. Let's not look at CO2. Let's not look at what the magician wants us to look at. Let's look at something else. Okay, cars. Now, we can go to electric cars, sure. But as we go to electric cars, I've also noticed, at least in Denmark, there's just been an increase in the amount of people getting cars. So there's traffic now that I never saw 10 years ago. But we have electric cars, so the CO2 goes down. But you're producing all these cars. Every 3 or 4 years, somebody wants a new car. What about the batteries? What about the heavy metals and all these different things that we're using? Where's that going to go? Where's it going to be trashed? Now, a lot of the energy, the electricity, can maybe get from windmills and all that, but can also be taken from other countries. So you're pushing your CO2 quota somewhere else where they already have enough problems, most likely. Anyways, that was a little digression. The idea I had a while back was, okay, if we really want to, let's say, let's be good to our future generations. Let's think smart. Let's not only think in CO2 and how much that cows are farting or whatever like that. Let's think in general things. Okay, what about cars? What if there was one car, almost like USSR communism kind of thing? What if there was one car with one color, with one size of door, with one type of part? Everything was the same. Now, what would that mean? Well, that would mean that every time somebody sold a car or damaged a car or got rid of a car, that car could be split up into every single working part that it has and then be used to every single other car working on the planet. Now, that simple mathematical, deduction in my head would, in my opinion, be absolutely massive for the damage that consumerism creates. And you could do that with anything. You could do that with a phone. You could do that with televisions. The problem with that in the long run, of course, is that most likely, just like the USSR, you would have some slowing of competition, and all of a sudden there is no competition. There's this one thing. And when do you change it? When do you upgrade it? And that's the real magic trick. That's what, to be honest, I don't think that the government wants you to see, because it will stop this whole golden age of we're going to cut CO2 and all that. Is that in the end of the day, all it means is that your life quality and your life standard, at least when it comes to comfort, it goes down. And in the end of the day, without a doubt in my mind, the only thing, and we saw this under Corona, the only thing that can seriously allow nature to bounce back is the slowing of human comfort and development individually as people. In other words, you live more uncomfortable, more simply, with less wealth. And it is the lack of humans. In other words, you don't all the time try to save every man, woman, and child out there from a natural death. It sounds horrible, but there needs to be less humans. There's no way that you can always increase the amount of humans and always, have this free right to have children. Anybody can have children. You have as many as you want, and every single child needs to live as long as they can, and nobody can die, and nobody can hurt, and nothing bad can happen. Because that's like having bunny rabbits with no fox. Sooner or later, it doesn't matter if you're only eating grass and that's super CO2 neutral, you're going to eradicate all the grass and everything is going to die, and then you're going to starve. You cannot just keep growing like that. So we need to start facing the facts. We need to start looking in looking our own mortality in the face and being like, do we deserve ultimate comfort, and do we deserve to be alive? What is it exactly, that is our legacy that we think we have? What is it exactly we are here for? It's kind of a hard thought. But in the end of the day, we saw it during Corona. Corona was really horrible for everybody. I'm traumatized by Corona because all my freedoms, all my ability to have comfort, it was restricted. Seriously restricted. You always had to stay indoors. You couldn't do what you wanted to do. It was very difficult to travel. For some people, it was worse than others. But everybody saw what happened. There's these images from the world about what happened to nature during all that. It bounced back immediately. So this is why I decided to say this today, is because I think there's a lot of young people who have their whole future ahead of them, and they're so gung-ho about turning things CO2 neutral and being green. I don't think they understand that means that your life's going to have to suck a lot more. And are you willing to do that? Or are you willing to not do that, but let somebody in a third world country do that? And that's another whole issue in this, is that, a lot of first world countries and third world countries as well, but they kind of follow along. They kind of have to, are making these demands that, okay, shoot, guys, we need to slow down here a little bit and whatever. But these third world countries never got started. So are you telling me that somebody making $2 a day in India or West Africa, that they need to start restricting their ability to take a flight or do anything or make money or have a car or have a mobile phone or anything like that? Those billions of people in those places, that they need to stop doing that immediately so that we can stop the CO2? Or is the fair thing to say they're allowed to get up to the same level that we are right now, and then they can drop off? But we need to drop off right now because we're already at the level of consuming massive amounts. Would the first world really be able to do that? Would we allow our children in the first world to restrict their lifestyles massively as sort of like a payback for what their parents created or whatever, and then, in all fairness, let billions of children in India and Africa and other places increase their lifestyle exponentially until the point that they are where we are right now, and then drop off? Just in all fairness, or does everybody need to drop off right now? So nobody who's been poor for the last 4 decades, 4 generations or whatever, they just gotta stop whatever they're doing. And of course, there's a lot of other ways that this could happen. This is what I see when I take a look at whatever magic trick is going on. And to be honest, I think that consumerism, in my experience of it, is one big magic trick. It's just made to look you in one direction and feel optimistic about something, so you keep spending and keep thinking that everything's good. And in reality, the real truth, you just don't want to see it. And in this case, I don't feel that we are. So I don't hear these kind of conversations. I don't hear any conversations about, too many people on the planet. What are we going to do about that? I mean, you hear it, but the solutions for it are unrealistic. And I don't hear any conversations about, okay, are you willing to have that your child has a drastically lower freedom and standard of living that you have, and that is the beginning of you taking responsibility for, the planet? Until I hear that, I don't believe at all that we're doing anything for the environment. I don't care how low the CO2 gets. I don't think anything's happening. That's basically all I have for today. It's actually something I feel quite passionate about, this subject. I actually am very split. I don't believe that we need to, that I think it's unfair that up and coming nations need to stop their growth just because we in the first world fuck things up, to be honest. I also love nature. I love to be out in nature, and I feel the wilder the better. And one other little thing I think about in conjunction with that is that, for example, in Denmark where I live, it's like a big park. Denmark's like a big park. Everything is controlled. What comes in, what comes out, it needs to be safe. Everything's nothing's really wild here. And at some point they were talking about, originally Denmark was a lot of forests, a lot of bogs, a lot of swamps. There was bear, there was wolf, and these kind of things. That was an ecosystem. That turned around and equaled zero in the whole pollution calculation. But nobody wants that back. Every time there's a discussion about should we allow wolves and wild pig to come back into Denmark, there's a whole big, are you really going to want to go for a walk with your grandchildren in the forest and there's wolves and bears out there? The Danes don't want that. So they're not willing. They're actually not willing. So you want to have a big garden. That's the idea. Big, beautiful green garden where everything's okay, but you're actually not willing to understand on a deeper level the balance between life and death and progression and regression that is necessary in order to really go to zero in things. Personally, I'm a fan of let things go fully wild, and we can tough it a little bit. But in order for us to tough it, we also need to bring up people who've been toughing it for the last 4 decades and are not the cause of all of this stuff, and not just move all of our production to their countries and all. That's ridiculous. Anyways, this is I would say something which is under development in my head anyways, but that's my observations until now. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.